reminding us that she has been in this city for 57 years. And I've known her for 45, 46, 47 of those years. And what comes to my mind in terms of what she meant for us on that one is something that I heard a long time ago from Thich Nhat Hanh, who came out of Vietnam in 1957 and came to Atlanta to see Martin King, to express his gratitude to Martin for the fact that King had nominated him for a Nobel Peace Prize. And Tay said he came through California from Vietnam to come into our country, and when he came through 67, it was the height of the student movement against the war in Vietnam. And he said to us, as he told us about that experience, that he was just overwhelmed by the tremendous power and vigor of the students and their call, out of Vietnam now, get out of Vietnam now. And he said he was so taken by it, and yet something else was in him. And he said to the students, I really appreciate the tremendous energy and solidarity that your call represents. You want your country out now. But I want you to understand, my children, that I represent a movement that has been struggling against overseas oppression for 400 years. And I think it is very important for you Americans to learn what it means to struggle with patience. And that, of course, is a very un-American idea for us. Struggle means now. Patience means sometime. And he's saying, struggle with patience. And that's what Grace Parks means to me. 57 years in one place. Not just relaxing, not just putting down a record for being there for a long time, but struggling 57 years. That's what I hear. And it seems to me that one of the things that Grace reminded me of when I first met her was the way in which that patience and that struggle was connected to what we had seen in the Southern movement. And that was that for a long, long time, as Detroit certainly knows, the major way that the majority of people in the Black South and White South had dealt with the terrors of the South was to leave. That seemed to be the best way to handle the situation. And Grace then reminded us that we did not get the fundamental change that we needed to get in the South until a critical mass decided not to leave, but to stay and struggle there at whatever the cost was. And Grace said back the first time I met her in the 60s was that I think we're going to have to do the same thing in the cities. We're going to have to start educating our children to leave the tough places in the cities and, quote, make it in the world to educate our children to stay and struggle and build the gardens and build the new schools and build the communities. That's what I've been hearing through all of this. I was thinking too, when Jenny was talking about that creativity that is so much at the heart of what we need to be about. It's not just staying, it's not just struggling, but it's bringing the best creativity that we have to the situations that we face. And my mind immediately jumped to the setting that Grace and I are going to be in tomorrow around the matter of education for democracy. And I am constantly asking the question for myself and for everyone else, how do we educate our young people towards that kind of creativity? How do you encourage creativity? How do you nurture creativity? It's not just accidental. You can see how it can be stifled. Therefore, it can also be nurtured. And the question of how do we do that in our organizing seems to me a critical question. Storytelling is obviously a part of it because it is so clear that many of us really are almost literally dying because we don't have a chance to tell our stories. And our communities are dying because we don't know each other's stories. And it would seem to me that every element of community organizing has to have that aspect of hearing the stories, telling the stories, knowing the stories, recording the stories. This country is badly in need of an authentic history. And we can't depend any longer on our blessed brother Howard Zinn to do it for us. Each community must build those stories. So I want to encourage you to think about that. In a sense, that's central, I guess, to growing our own food. That our stories are our food. And we need that. We can't depend upon corporate television to tell the stories that will feed us into life. Amen. That's our responsibility. And I've heard that coming from us again and again. Lisa, what is Liza or Lisa? Lisa, what I heard just jump out at me was when you spoke about your variation on Grace's Chinese pictograph of crisis, time of great danger, time of great opportunity. And you said, this is an exciting and scary time. I guess for me, hearing that reminded me of all of those times, especially on some of the night marches in the South, when we were in some very dangerous and deadly situations. And we would be marching and we would be singing, "We are not afraid," and our knees would be almost buckling with trembling. But what the song meant was that we are not going to let this fear overcome us. We are going to walk through the fear, because you're right, it's a scary time. We don't know if we can do it. We don't know if it's possible. We don't know if the folks will listen to us. We don't know if we have the right ideas. But nevertheless, the luxury of giving up is not given to us. And so scary, yes. Moving, yes. With patience, yes, is what I kept hearing from you. And I'm so glad that you kept us alive to this matter of our continuing responsibility to recognize that after more than 300 years of a peculiar and terrible kind of racism and classism in American society, we will not overcome it simply by our good intentions, but that somehow we've got to focus on it, not to let it overcome us, but to recognize that in almost everything we do, we've got to ask the questions, and now what does our racial situation have to do with what we're doing here and how we're doing it? And it would seem to me that that's scary, especially for those of us who've not learned how to talk about race without being frightened. But it's also a wonderful opportunity to ask, how can we do it? How can we learn? How can we learn without it becoming something that simply burdens us down? And I hope that Lisa, you and others will be able to continue doing that. The last thing I want to mention about what I was hearing was from Brother Julio, and this whole matter of social capital, and how the peculiar knowledge that all of us bring to these situations form a certain kind of capital, and the beautiful knowledge of the fact that the things that grow up between the bricks can be eaten for breakfast was a wonderful kind of social knowledge. My guess is that in a setting like this, we might say that that's a parable. What is it that grows up between the bricks that we have been missing? Simply because it grows between the bricks and not the places that we thought it should be growing. Lots to think about. I'm so grateful for you folks sharing these stories with us. And again, I come back to Grace's last words that were taken from our marvelous sister June Jordan, who has spoken, I'm sure, to all of your situations when she wrote that beautiful poem and said to us, we are the ones we've been waiting for. So I've been waiting for you, you've been waiting for me, we've been waiting for each other, and Detroit, and the USA, and wherever you come from is waiting. And we have this wonderful opportunity to say, here we are, scared but moving.